Have you ever felt like your mind just doesn't stop? Even when everything around you is quiet? Like you're lying in bed, the lights are off, your phone is away, but inside your head there's a storm. Thoughts looping, questions repeating, meanings being dissected over and over again. Why did they say that? What did they really mean? What if things go wrong tomorrow? What if I misunderstood everything? If this feels familiar, you might be someone who thinks deeply. Now, at first glance, deep thinking sounds like a gift. And in many ways it is. People who think deeply tend to be more aware, more observant, more connected to the unseen layers of life. They don't just see what's happening, they analyze why it's happening. They don't just hear words, they try to understand the emotion behind them. But here's the paradox. The same mind that gives you depth can also drown you in it. Deep thinkers often live in two worlds at once. The external world, where things are simple, fast, and surface level. And the internal world, where everything is complex, slow, and layered. And sometimes, the internal world becomes so loud that it starts to overshadow reality itself. Imagine this. Someone sends you a short message. Okay, that's it. Just one word. A non-deep thinker might read it and move on. But a deep thinker, their mind starts building stories. Why just okay? Are they upset? Did I say something wrong? Is something changing between us? Within seconds, one word turns into 100 possibilities. This is because deep thinkers are highly sensitive to meaning. They don't just process information, they interpret it constantly. Psychologically, this is often linked to heightened self-awareness and what researchers call rumination, the tendency to continuously think about the same thoughts, especially negative or uncertain ones. It's like your brain is trying to solve a puzzle that doesn't even have all the pieces. And here's the tricky part. The brain believes it's helping you. It thinks, if I just analyze this enough, I'll find clarity. But instead, it often creates confusion. You see, not every thought needs to be solved. Not every feeling needs to be decoded. But for someone who thinks deeply, letting go feels unnatural, almost irresponsible. Because in their mind, thinking more means understanding more, and understanding more means being in control. But is that really true? Or is it just an illusion of control? There's also another layer to this. Deep thinkers are often highly empathetic. They feel things deeply, not just their own emotions, but others too. They can sense tension in a room without a word being spoken. They can pick up on subtle changes in tone, behavior, energy. And while this makes them incredibly perceptive, it also makes them vulnerable. Because when you feel everything deeply, you also carry everything deeply. A small comment can linger for days. A minor mistake can feel like a major failure. A simple misunderstanding can turn into an emotional burden. And yet, from the outside, they often look calm, composed, quiet, thoughtful, because most of their battles are invisible. That's another paradox. The loudest storms often exist in the quietest minds. And maybe that's why deep thinkers sometimes feel misunderstood. Because how do you explain a feeling that doesn't even have a clear shape? How do you express something that keeps changing every time you try to define it? So they stay silent. They overthink instead of speaking. They analyze instead of asking. They assume instead of clarifying. And slowly, their thoughts become their reality. But here's a question worth asking. What if not every thought you have is true? What if your mind, as intelligent as it is, sometimes exaggerates, distorts, or even misleads you? Because thinking deeply doesn't always mean thinking clearly. And that realization can change everything. Let's pause for a moment and look at this from another angle. What if the problem isn't that you think too much, but that you trust every thought too easily? Deep thinkers often assume that because a thought feels important, it must be meaningful. But feelings aren't always facts. Thoughts aren't always truths. Sometimes they're just echoes. Echoes of past experiences. Echoes of fears. Echoes of things you've never fully processed. And when you think deeply, those echoes get louder. There's a concept in psychology called the default mode. Network, a part of the brain that becomes active when you're not focused on the outside world. It's responsible for self-reflection, memory, and imagination. In deep thinkers, this network tends to be more active, which means even in moments of rest, the mind is still working, still analyzing, still questioning, still searching. And while this can lead to creativity, insight, and emotional intelligence, it can also lead to anxiety, overthinking, and mental exhaustion. It's like having a powerful engine, but no off switch. Now think about this. Have you ever replayed a conversation in your head, hours or even days later? Rewriting what you said, imagining what you should have said, wondering how the other person perceived you. That's not just thinking. That's reliving. Deep thinkers don't just experience moments, they revisit them over and over again. And each time, the emotion feels just as real. But here's where things get even more interesting. Deep thinkers often seek meaning in everything. They want life to make sense. They want connections, purpose, clarity. But life isn't always logical. Sometimes things happen without a clear reason. Sometimes people act without explanation. Sometimes closure never comes. And this is where deep thinkers struggle the most, because they're trying to solve a mystery that has no answer. And the more they try, the more lost they feel. So what's the way out? Not by stopping thinking altogether. That's neither possible nor necessary, but by changing your relationship with your thoughts. Instead of diving into every thought, observe it. Instead of believing every story your mind creates, question it. Instead of asking, what does this mean? Every time. Sometimes ask, does this even need a meaning? There's a quiet strength in letting things be, in accepting that not everything needs to be understood, in realizing that peace doesn't come from having all the answers, but from being okay without them. And maybe that's the real shift, from control to acceptance, from analysis to awareness, from overthinking to simply noticing. Because deep thinking in itself is not the enemy. It's how you use it that matters. Used well, it can bring wisdom, creativity, and deep emotional connection. Used without awareness, it can trap you in cycles of doubt and mental noise. So the question isn't, how do I stop thinking so much? The real question is, how do I think in a way that serves me instead of exhausting me? And maybe the answer is simpler than it seems. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every feeling needs your reaction. Not every moment requires your analysis. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is just be. Be present. Be aware. Be still. Because in that stillness, something beautiful happens. The noise fades. The pressure softens. And for a moment, your mind finally rests. And maybe, just maybe, that's where clarity truly begins.